All right. Mr. Manager.
Oh, Mayor, members of council, we're going to test or validate maybe a couple of two or three of y'all's objectives over the last several months. One of them was you wanted to meet more frequently, so this is 3 in a row, about to be 4 in a row next week, so we're going to find out if you get tired of seeing us or not. So the NLC, caused a little bit of juggling last time, so it feels like every day is Tuesday. And we're also going to, tonight continues the theme of following housing, education, public safety in terms of these work sessions and making sure that the topics are focused on your priorities and the things that you all want, and moving toward less presentations and more deliberations and conversations. And so tonight's theme is education, and we'll spend some time talking about Commission on Lifelong Learning. And frankly, I'm going to spend a little bit of time. Suzanne Purdy is going to help us a little bit just to follow up to the retreat. We really are looking for you all to have some conversation of what it is you want to accomplish, and we'll tee that piece up. Norfolk Emerging Leaders, Daryl Crittenden and Wayne Green are going to step up and give you a presentation. And I think you all know about this program. I'm not sure the community knows it as well as perhaps they should. And I got to tell you, it's a fantastic program. And what you all have done over the years in terms of bringing young talent into the organization. And there's a great slide at the end that Mr. Thomas and I were just looking at of alumni, if you will, that have landed in the organization and are having a real impact on the organization. So that I think be a fun one to hear. We've got 2 or 3 closed, actually 3 now, closed session items. We'll jump into closed session. Depending on how that conversation goes around lifelong learning, if we end that by 6:15 or 6:30, then I think it's probably, Bernard and I were talking, it's probably worth having a little bit of a conversation about the ARB appeal process. You've got an appeal out there tonight. It's probably good to just, you haven't had one in a long time, and sort of walk everybody through what we'll do. So we'll do that if we have time. Before we do all that, I want to ask Economic Development Director Chuck Rigney to step up. And you're voting on an item tonight down in Ocean View, a development project that we've certainly talked about a lot as a group, but really haven't talked about it much publicly. So just want the folks at home and the folks in the chambers to understand what we're doing tonight. And so I'd ask Chuck to step up and take a couple minutes and talk you through that.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council. Just an update on our Pinewell Station project. As everybody knows, the Breeden companies have come in and made us an offer. Can we let's flip it here? Thanks. So as everybody knows, we were dealing with ZP Development. The deal didn't go down, and what we have, we went out and the Breeden company is interested in building a 145-unit apartment complex on the site, and they have a same sales price at $1.285. That was the former site plan. And again, I would caution everybody that this project will be going through ARB and the Planning Commission. The new site plan and the elevations that they are proposing are, as they understand it, going to be required to go through ARB. And regardless of what this particular site plan might look like, they understand that they've got to satisfy ARB and the Planning Commission. If you noticed, the big change, I think, in addition to one building as opposed to the site plan that you see here with basically 3 buildings, is they've moved everything from the AQS line there and moved a larger amenity package, the swimming pool and the fitness center, on that other side of the line, and they have proposed a tot lot and a dog park along with the tree easement area, the public green space. Everything along that line then would certainly satisfy the Navy's requirements in working with them to ensure that they're not concerned about development on that site. They would have a secured entranceways here and here. There is no access off Norfolk Avenue or any outlet onto Chesapeake Boulevard with this particular proposed site plan. Basically, what we would then propose is that we would move forward with the approval of the contract and understanding that the project still needs to go into site plan review, ARB approval and Planning Commission approvals for the rezoning.
Thank you, Chuck.
Okay.
So again, a project that's gotten a lot of conversation in that community of Ocean View, but really not so much publicly. Just want everybody to understand what we were looking at doing tonight. With that said, the Commission on Lifelong Learning, and Kim, if you don't mind popping up the presentation for us. Suzanne Purrier, who helped us with the retreat, and this, if you think about housing as the theme last week, housing, a lot more that's been going on, frankly, with y'all's discussions and with staff discussion, and we were able to jump right into some pretty heavy conversation following the housing study and some recommendations that were coming out of that study. Tonight is really more about shaping strategy and really more of a follow-up to the retreat. The recommendation that we're making to you all, and that you all, we really discussed a little bit at the retreat, is really to follow the framework that council used for the Poverty Commission. Not everybody at the table was here then, so I think it's good to kind of walk you through that. So what I'm going to do, is just remind everybody what that process and framework was, what that looked like. I think one of the things that I'm learning made that process effective was a very distinct timeline and agreed upon set of milestones that walked you through a process that made sure that you had a process that was finished in a couple of years. And again, we think that's a successful model that you should follow again. I'll wrap that up, and then what we're really looking to you all is what is it you want out of this commission? What's the role of the commission? I'll show you what the role of the Poverty Commission was, but that's going to be the important piece that gives us some direction. And you'll see that we're going to come back to you in 45 days or so with a lot more detail. Kim? So the Poverty Commission, really pretty straightforward. Most of you know this, but established by council resolution, commission that said we want to see some recommendations within a year. The role of that particular commission was to obviously look at poverty in Norfolk and to bring forward some recommendations around educational attainment and employment, and obviously an end goal of reducing the number of families living in poverty in Norfolk. Council designated 34 members for that committee, and we would think that you'd have a similar size. What I'm understanding, and I think probably made the appropriate connection between council and the commission, was you had a couple of co-chairs from the body that served, in that case, Ms. Williams-Graves and Mr. Ruggiero. And you had, as I said earlier, a very distinct timeline. So we know we're going to start this thing in June of 13. We're going to finish it in June of 14. Set up regular meetings, and we're going to have a 90-minute meeting, no more than that, and a good deal of staff support. And so that, much like we're doing with you all in your meetings, is give the group work ahead of time and preparation ahead of time before that meeting, whether that was demographic information or information about poverty or some of the things that are happening in other communities, an opportunity to have thoughtful conversation. In terms of the structure, you had the full commission, and then apparently they broke pretty quickly into subcommittees. And those subcommittees, you can see there, were from childhood to adult workforce and some neighborhood revitalization and support. Those committees made recommendations to the full commission and had some town hall meetings at the end to confirm the recommendations that were coming out. Obviously, we staffed the commission and had folks from the city manager's office, from development, human services, neighborhood development libraries, and RPOs. So you had a lot of talent in the room, and then a lot of staff support. And obviously, the final report came out and said, these are the things that we want you all to work toward, and both short and long-term recommendations. So my sense from listening to you all at the retreat, from listening to folks in the community, from listening to my staff, is that this was a committee process that really worked. And I'm not going to talk you through these deadlines more than to just say part of what I think made this successful was you had a very specific task and a set of milestones to hit, and everybody stayed true to that, and you kept that connection to council, and they reported back, in July 14 with a report. And so again, I'm going to ask Suzanne to jump up, but that framework of a commission chaired by 2 council members, of members designated by council, appropriate staff support, and a very specific role. And again, the role here was to examine the nature of poverty in Norfolk and recommend actions that would increase educational attainment and employment and reduce the number of citizens and families living in poverty. So very expensive.
Can I just ask Angela and those that were also on the committee, and we thought from the outside anyway that this was a model that worked. Are there recommendations that you all find or would offer that you think might improve upon that model?
I think the model worked. I think that one of the things that we were successful in terms of putting the commissioners together was we utilized individuals who had dealings with or serviced poor communities or individuals who were in poverty. Excuse me, and so we got to understand some of the barriers or issues that were presented to them by their service, the people that they serviced, as well as some of the things that they ran across as problems as service providers in order to be able to provide a better service. The work groups were really a big part of the success of the group because in addition to the monthly meetings that we held where everyone came together around the table, the individuals who were broken out into work groups, they met more frequently. And I think the biggest part of that was that it wasn't just an ongoing, never-ending, perpetual committee. It had clear starts.
You think the number was appropriate? Was it an unwieldy number or was that about right?
Well,
Pretty
you know,
big
you
group.
have the number on paper, and then you have the number who actually participated. And the number of people who actually participated ended up working out very well. Some people sent surrogates, which was fine because they weren't actually able to participate themselves, and that worked well. But there's a larger number on paper than actually committed to participating. And so I think, you know, with everything, you kind of get that anyway. So, except this group, y'all show up
Day or night meeting? Which did you do? Day or night meetings?
every. We did night. We did evening, and we also provided food. And but I don't know what the I mean it is if you're asking people to come out from 5:30 or 6 o'clock till 7 or 8 o'clock at night, I think that you don't want them there starving, and you don't want KFC here, something else there, all that kind of stuff. So we provided like 30 minutes ahead where we provided dinner, food, whatever, and I think that was very helpful. And considerate also of people's time. Now, what they did in work groups as far as meeting, I don't know what those meetings were. They were still in the evening. They were during the, okay. And I guess the work groups themselves decided on what times, because they were small. They were 3-4 people, and so they decided on what times were better for the group. And so.
I would assume evening meetings would be better for this group as well because you'll have probably representation from like daycare provider that cannot do it during the day because they're watching kids. Even in home, a single daycare provider we may end up appointing somebody that fills that.
Mrs. McClellan?
So this report was delivered 2.5 years ago approximately. In terms of the deliverables and how we are tracking where we are, how is that done?
Yeah, we probably should have had Susan Perry here, but
She's here.
Oh, well, there you go. Susan, you want to talk about follow-up?
Yes, so we produce an annual report, but last year around this time, my position was appointed to specifically do this work every day. So that was one of the outcomes of the report was that somebody needed to wake up thinking about this every day. And so we're tracking internally those measures.
As council, we budget chair, it had more of an impact on our budget decisions.
It definitely was part of the budget recommendations. based
Because
on the
one of the things in the report was, this is what we want to do, this is approximately how much it's going to cost. So it's not just what we want to do, we actually put price tags to it so that we knew if it was something we could do that was a low-hanging fruit item, or if we needed to put money together over several budget cycles to make it happen.
Along those lines, though, I'm sorry, I was reading, it was a great report, really well done. And I was familiar with it, but actually looking into the details, some of the items, though, overlap with education.
Okay.
And so I could see a continuation in this concept of a commission on lifelong learning.
Because we had education, I mean, of course, you know, representatives from the school board, who were on the commission as well. There's actually a couple in different areas.
And then after this, we can do economic development. We can do, because it just
Well,
keeps
that,
going.
well, the reason why I pitched this commission was actually because there was more work that needed to be done from the Poverty Commission. There was the whole part on early childhood education, and really nothing has been done on that that's big, because we always rely on the school system to handle that. And so trying to get everybody to the table to figure out how we could expand that, or what council may end up need to do to encourage that expansion of early childhood. And then workforce development was also mentioned in there as well, and how do we get people in jobs.
I said that'd be next.
Mrs. Johnson.
So we get an annual report, did you say?
Yes, so the last one was in June of 16, so we'll do another one this.
I think that we might want to consider doing more frequent reports and where we are as our tracking system, sort of like a checks and balances, so that we can, know that we have things moving versus doing an annual report.
Okay, so I'd ask Suzanne to just step up. So here's where we're going, and this is great. This is exactly what we wanted, was you all thinking through and talking through this. And really the conversation now is give us some direction. At the retreat, we talked a little bit about, is it before school and after school and adult education? And, what is it that a lifelong learning commission needs to accomplish for us? So Suzanne is going to sort of follow up to her work at the retreat.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council, thank you. Thank you for already starting the discussion. Things I've heard that there seems to be some general interest in following the model of the Poverty Commission, because there were some successes, a number of successes that were a result of that work. It's recognized that there's some overlap, or potential overlap, between the recommendations of the Poverty Commission and some of the work you all want to continue to do around early education and workforce development. I hear you like the idea of fairly broad, diverse participation in the commission, and that it is a time limit. There is a sunset to it. So what else are you all thinking that the role of this commission would be? What do you want to accomplish at the end of this 12 months, 18 months?
So I know that there's been some discussion about Norfolk Public Schools and their involvement in this, and what this commission could do or not do with Norfolk Public Schools. I believe that there's a delicate balance there. This is not meant to do anything that the school board is responsible for, but the commission should, in a sense, they have to have a general understanding of how Norfolk Public Schools works. We're looking at data and their goals, where they're looking to go, and possibly assist them with some areas of recommendations or things, if it's with early childhood, expanding pre-K there. But I know that there's been some conversation. The idea is never to take over the school board and what they're doing. It's to work along with them. In fact, there should be school personnel as part of this commission as well, so that we're helping, we're assisting, because they don't have the resources necessary. And there may even be a group that breaks off of this, a subcommittee that looks at salaries overall, from what early childhood, what daycare homes make, what churches pay their people, what teachers make in Norfolk Public Schools compared to other places, what college people make in this area, if we're involving colleges. That could be one branch, but it's not to tell the school system you need to pay your teachers more, or to tell the colleges you got to pay them more. It's to say this is data that we've collected that may impact that. That would be probably an extreme example, but most of it would be, I think, just working in parallel with our universities and school board and what they're doing, and finding out, collecting that data, getting that data together, and seeing where we're going, what we need to improve upon.
I agree. Also, I think that we need to recognize the 21st century high-demand jobs and to make sure that our workforce development or initiatives are in line and sync with what employers are looking for. And that's in partnership with the vocational and career and technical education and the high-demand jobs in cybersecurity, advanced manufacturing, healthcare. Mrs. Graves and Mrs. Johnson.
One of the things that I would like to make sure that we include as a definition of diversity, in that we don't just look at white people and black people and rich people and poor people, that we look at our Latino population, that we look at our Asian population, that we look at the possible need for English as a second language opportunities for our citizens and our residents, and so that we are completely inclusive of all of the members of our society when we talk about lifelong learning. Some simple things as acclimation to the city, city services, city resources for those who don't have English as their first native language. So that would be something that I would like to include it.
Mrs. Johnson.
We also discussed that we were going to take a look at what Norfolk Public Schools initiatives and priorities were and align them with the city's initiatives and priorities, along with taking a look at the state. When we do our legislative packet, we're more in line to what the state is doing and what is coming down the state pipeline. I think that we should also include Norfolk Public Schools legislative packet and how they feel about certain things as far as their priorities. So I would like to see that, a comparison of our alignment with Norfolk Public Schools and the state, so all three agencies.
On the high-demand jobs, the 21st century learning, the state has put emphasis, again, on those high-demand areas. And with teachers and the business community and education experts to ensure that we meet the demand for the employers. So that's vocational, technical, career, education, getting our citizens the certification that they need so they can enter into the market. A lot of those jobs don't necessarily require a 4-year degree, but they do require an industry recognized certification or some type of industry recognized certificate. And these are high-paying jobs. And so if we're going to talk about lifelong learning, we have to include that 21st century learning initiative in there.
And also, Mr. Mayor, the business district is looking for, we're focused on STEM, but one area of STEM and STEAM, I think it's called, is the engineering part. We're not doing so well with the engineering part of STEM. We're missing out on that part as far as the business world is concerned. And it's very important to them that we address the concerns of the engineering. We're not doing well with that.
Andrea.
Just from a high level, 50,000 level, I mean, trying to understand what we want out of this, right? It's what we want is, we want people to want to live in Norfolk because they're going to get great education for themselves, for their kids, they're going to be well prepared for their jobs, and companies are going to want to locate here. And that's sort of, is that what we're, and then
Yes.
sort of from there, we get into some minutia of things.
Very
And
well
how
said.
and what are the different groups that touch that? I mean, including Norfolk Public Schools, but our higher education, our
And that's what we did with the
Preschool,
poverty
churches,
commission.
yeah.
That's basically what we did with the commissioners, was we looked at what we were trying to, what we looked at was what we were trying to accomplish. And then who are the people, who are the industries who participate, if you will, or work in that environment or can have some input. That's exactly what we did with the poverty commission.
I would,
Go ahead,
I'm
Dr.
sorry, I
Woodward.
would just add to that I think you also want an educated community.
That's correct.
Oh,
And
yes.
so, although what you're talking about, those other things,
Right.
I mean, that really is what we're talking about, literacy, all that. I'll add at an even higher level. You know, I've talked about this for several meetings. We all mouth the words about regionalism, but yet somehow we're not doing anything. I think this is a great chance for us to do this and for us to reach out to other communities and see some ways that we can start. We've got Go Virginia and all the names that comes from, and this is perfect opportunity for us to start with that. So I'd really like to see us use that as a kind of an overarching.
Mrs. Smigiel to Mrs. Graves.
And that's what I was gonna say, with Terry, with Go Virginia. I don't know if this commission actually will help us maybe with making an argument to go after some funding for a specific project.
Has to be two communities, right?
Yeah,
Right, so-
we'll have two communities or two universities, two social systems. So maybe asked earlier about, what the state is doing, and what the state has put emphasis on is on, again, this 21st century workplace, and the data that we have received, that workplace will require 1 graduate degree, 2 bachelor's degrees, but 7 individuals with an associate or the industry recognized certification. That's what that new 21st century workplace looked like. And so this lifelong learning, part of that is, again, recognizing what the industries are looking for, and that we have the programs and services and resources in place. Mrs. Graves.
I think when we had a conversation about housing, and we were talking about the median sales price or median rent level of housing, Martin made a very ingenious is a word that comes to mind, but it may not be the one that I'm thinking of, comment about how do we raise the income levels of our residents. Instead of trying to lower the prices of housing and lower the pricing of rent, how do we, and that goes to what Terry just said about having an educated citizenry, having educated residents. So if people have better skill sets, the idea is that they will be able to get better jobs,
Right.
so that they will be able to afford nicer quality housing, more expensive housing, whatever you want to call it, and that their children are getting a quality education in that same environment. So it kind of all ties together to like what you said, and I think that was like at the retreat or something.
Mrs. Graves, one of the things that the governor often cite, and you've heard of, like cybersecurity jobs that's available. All you need is an industry recognized certification, and that job, annual salary is $95,000. Electrician, $47,000. Network support specialist, $65,000. Welder, $40,000. A pharmacy technician, $32,000. Dental assistant, $36,000. And an industry mechanic, $45,000.
I need to ditch grad school.
So the industry recognized certification or the certificate is golden. That is the fastest way to build a middle class. And so, Mrs. McCullough.
I would just suggest that we look at this always with a framework or a lens with technology in mind. I mean, I think Norfolk should be the most technologically advanced city in the state, forget the region, in the state. And as we think about learning, all of the jobs that you mentioned, even the welder, they all require technology in some shape or form or fashion. Not necessarily a degree, but a competency with coding and with computers and technology. And so it's one of the things that I think we really need to continue to stress in everything that we do with regards to this. I mean, we should provide online learning that is available to all of our kids as well as those who aren't in our school system. And make that a part of everything that we do as council, et cetera. I mean, continue to push out information about what we do and how we operate, for example.
And that is, as you know, really consistent with your approach to your strategic work. It's been the housing, safety, education supported by infrastructure and resilience and technology. So we've not heard from Mr. Thomas or Mr. Riddick. I just want to make sure that if you had any thoughts on it.
Angela already called me a genius. I should probably just keep my mouth shut.
Quit.
No, I'm good.
I missed that.
You had to pay close attention.
Mr. Riddick, you want to add? You good? Okay. All right, thank you.
Can I just do a real fast recap?
No, you go right on.
So that we, you want to always begin with the end in mind. What do you want to accomplish? What do you want this commission to do? What is the charter, and that is to really look at lifelong learning in its broadest sense so that you have a literate, well-educated, successful community where people want to live, work, play. We heard that the commission itself should be truly diverse and that there are opportunities to perhaps align with state efforts, the efforts of the Norfolk Public School and the school board, and of the region. And we looked at some of the issues to drill down on, particularly around early childhood, 21st century work sites, the idea that people can make living wages with jobs that have industry-wide certification that feeds into your workforce development efforts, and how you continue to build in the component of technology in all that you do. Anything that I missed?
Good.
Anything to add? Thank you for your time.
Suzanne, that was great.
I think we have some next
Pop
steps
that
really
next- yeah,
quickly.
There you
Oh,
go. Oops. Once you made it, you got it.
That was clear.
there we go. And I'll leave them for,
So what we're gonna do is really take the next month and take what you all told us, frame it up into what will ultimately be a resolution that we would bring back to you all on the 9th of May with recommendations on, to make this look just like the framework that you have for the Poverty Commission. And included in that would be recommendation for the membership and your validation of that as part of that resolution. Sorry?
I just have a question. So I assume that the universities, TCC, ODU, Norfolk State, Virginia Wesleyan, ODU, we would all want them to have, are you going to look for specific names, or are you going to ask those universities to appoint somebody to this? So just so we have an idea, do you want us to recommend specific people for this, or just the organizations that would have representation?
I think you can do both. If you've got specific people you think would be talented from Old Dominion or Norfolk State or wherever, let us have those, and we'll vet them, and I say vet them, we'll sort of get them on a list and try and come up with something that's well balanced. But frankly, I'd say both.
I do think it would be well to make sure that these are people that are interested. When you talked about how many came versus how many were invited. Sometimes the names we know are pretty busy and they're limited with who comes.
I think letting the schools, especially on the collegiate level, letting them participate. And the other piece to that also is, if we're looking at the colleges and universities, having a student participate as well. So a student from Tidewater, a student from Norfolk State, a student from Old Dominion, to participate in like an intern level or something, because they're the end user of the education system, no matter what it is. Having a student from each of the four or five high schools that we have, and they're, what is to incorporate what their experiences are, especially when you talk to TCC, because you have more of a working class student. So they're able to tell us what they're finding in the workplace as their experience, in their own experience. So having those individuals as well, because everybody ultimately finds a place, but I think it would be great to have that also.
Maybe an opportunity for the NEL program to have interns this summer, if this is going to be starting up this summer, working as part of this. I don't know how you've laid out your 200 and something, I think it is,
Such a good segue.
yeah, that are working on that. I will also say, I didn't bring it today, but I have when I was asked Bernard to send me the language on the Poverty Commission to align this with that, I had come up with a list of possible organizations, just, I didn't have the names of people, so, on that.
Andrew brought up 2 private schools.
Right, well, yeah, you,
And I
yeah.
think we ought to include that.
And churches that have daycare center, there's a whole group on that list.
So we're gonna need a bigger room, and need a bigger boat.
Yeah.
And our technical schools too, like Tidewater Tech, Fortis College, they address those, scholars who are in the workforce already, and they can tell us exactly what they're experiencing, as you said, Councilwoman
Maybe
Graves.
we should meet at the main and
That's
that,
what I was gonna say.
Hall Frame Center of Excellency, whatever it's. where they have- Yes. Was it excellent? Oh, okay.
So on May the 9th, we will create the commission.
So, that would be our thought, there would be a resolution that sort of lays all this out. And so we'll certainly chat some more about this, but that's kind of, just want you to know the timeframe we're on.
Do you have somebody heading this up so my lawyer can work with them?
So I think if you bring it through me for now, part of what we want to do is not get ahead of you all. I've heard that phrase before, don't get ahead of council. So I wanted to hear what you all said, what you wanted to accomplish tonight, and then we'll bring that back to you, but we'll work closely with you.
All right, Mr. Manager, what's
All
up
right,
next?
so Mr. Springle gave us a great, Suzanne, thanks a ton. We're very fortunate to have Suzanne sort of stay looped in on these things for us and keep you connected to the conversations at the retreat. So Daryl Crittenden's going to step up and announce, and obviously the Director of Recreation, Parks, Open Space. This Norfolk Emerging Leaders, Nell, on the one hand, I think it's extremely well known by the organization and really this room. I'm not sure it's as well known by the community. It's a phenomenal program. And as I said at the beginning, one of the slides you're going to see of the talent that has come out of that is really a great story. And then I think he's going to introduce Wayne Green, who will step up and give more details. But Daryl, glad to have you.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, council members, Mr. Manager. Since 2011, the Department of Recreation, Parks, and Open Space has hosted the NEL program. And it's with great pride that I say that each year our number of participants, the funding levels have risen since 2011. There have been opportunities for workforce development for youth. There have been opportunities from private businesses, internal departments, and I want to say our youth in that program have really thrived. So, I mean, we're really excited this year with our addition of 2017. We have new leadership. We have Wayne Green, our assistant director, provides the overall management of the program. Alana Smith, who's our new NEL program coordinator, who actually provides the day-to-day supervision of the NEL program. And basically with their expertise, their knowledge, and resources and contacts throughout the city, we're looking to really enhance the program this year, provide worthwhile opportunities for all youth and those involved in the program. So without further ado, I'm going to turn the podium over tonight to Wayne Green, our Assistant Director. He'll be making the presentation.
Thank you, Daryl.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, City Council, City staff. My name is Wayne Graham, Assistant Director of Recreation, Parks, and Open Space. As we move forward toward a full accreditation of our department, it is programs such as the Norfolk Emerging Leaders Program that is helping us get there. Daryl mentioned that our new coordinator is Ms. Alana Smith, and this will tell you a lot about the program. Alana went to Granby High School. Alana went to the University of Virginia. Alana was one of the early participants in the executive internship program. Alana became a NEL counselor. Alana came inside of the organization as a recreation specialist, and now Alana has been selected to be the NEL coordinator. So there is no one that knows this program better than Alana Smith. But none of this could have happened without the support of the administration and with Daryl Crittenden, because in 2011, we took a summer recreation, summer jobs program, and we turned it into a full-scale work development program. So what I mean by that is the program went from providing jobs for young people to be in a rec center or in public works to having the foundation and understanding of what it takes to not only have a job, but to be able to keep a job. So with that said, we have a brief presentation for you that really talks about this program transitioning from a summer employment program to workforce development. This program is exposing our youth to public service. We're attracting talent to the city, and it's helping youth gain a valuable work experience. So the Norfolk Emerging Leaders Program is in 3 phases. The first phase is the Emerging Leader Program, and it's a 7-week program for youth ages 16 to 19. What makes this component of the program so exciting, because many of you will remember that the federal government used to have summer job employment programs. I think some of them were called Speedy, but because there were federal funds attached to it, there were a lot of restrictions to the program. This program is fully funded by the taxpayer dollars of Norfolk. So that means that all Norfolk youth ages 16 and 19 are eligible to participate in this program. Whether you go to a public school, whether you go to a private school, whether you're homeschooled, you're eligible to participate in this program. Whether your parents make $1 zillion or whether your parents make $1, you're eligible to participate in this program. If you are interested in serving your community, learning about the goals of what public service does, this program is potentially for you. We have 19 city departments that are actively engaged in this program, but we have a bunch of departments that are providing the backbone of the program. We have the city attorney's office, we have human resources, we have finance, making sure that young people get checks. So there are a lot of people that are making this thing happen. Then we have our executive intern program, and this program is for 13 superstars. There's no other way to discuss these young people that are coming from colleges and universities from throughout the state as well as throughout the nation. We have a fellow now that's in resiliency that is coming from the University of Texas at Austin. We've had executive interns that have come from a student that was from Virginia that went to school in Spain that came back to participate in this program. So at the end of this program, you'll see some of that talent that we've been able to retain inside of the organization. And then we have the Fellows Program. This program is for either 1 or 2 individuals that have completed graduate school that they're doing intensive analysis inside of the organization. We have a person now that is in resiliency that is working on that program in the fellow program, and she would be going into her 2nd year in that program. They say picture's worth 1,000 words. I'm going to tell you that a testimonial will go inside your consciousness. We have a quick video for you.
My name is Alicia. When I first joined the NEL program, I worked in library aid. The adults and even students were friendly. That was a tough summer for me because I had lost my father, but the leaders of the program helped me overcome that hardship.
My name is Howard. As part of the NEL Executive Intern Program, I was in Human Resources at City Hall, learning about the importance of classification and compensation, as well as the methodology for creating and distributing policy directives. The experience directly supported my graduate degree, and I now have skills that will help in my career pursuits.
If there's one area of the program where we believe that we need to do more work and we can do more work, and we've devoted a lot of attention to it in the last several years, and that is an outreach. As the manager indicated at the very beginning, the people inside this room, they really know about the program. It's the people outside of the room that we are really trying to engage and work with. So we have developed a number of partnerships with Norfolk Public Schools, with the private schools, with local universities, with universities throughout the state. In fact, I went on some crazy voyage last spring that I went to 7 universities throughout the state in like 1.5 days because that former budget director, Sabrina Joy Hogg, she wasn't going to pay for a hotel room. Okay? All right. Not 2 nights anyway. So we did the whirlwind, man. So we went all over the place. So we've been really engaged. We've been working with community organizations such as CLEAN. We've been working with Opportunity, Inc. We are now a full partner in the Jobs Plus program that Norfolk Redevelopment Housing Authority has received a federal grant for. So we're working with NRHA on this program. We have direct relationships with colleges and universities. And the thing that young people like, we're now expanding out into social media to really get the word out about the program. So the demographics of the program. So when we started this initiative, I believe many years ago as a summer program, we were probably talking about 100 youth to be able to come inside the organization. We're now up to 250 participants. We have a little overfill that we do. So last year we had 253 through attrition because people go back to school early, they go into other activities. Last year we finished the program with 220 participants. We had 19 departments that provided job opportunities in 70 work sites. So it's not just coming into a recreation center and working with young people to throw out the ball. This is really about leadership development. This is about youth development, helping young people achieve their personal potential, trying to see what new opportunities are out there and available for them. So we have opportunities to where people working in traffic engineering, or they're working out in parks and forestry, or in streets and bridges, or they are working side by side with a biologist at the Morris Bridges plant. So there are all types of opportunities for young people in our 16 and 19-year-old program. So for 2017, we have the program budgeted for 250 participants. We had 674 applicants for the program. 127 of those participants or applicants, they have previously participated in the program, so they're going to want to potentially come back to the program. And then we have 548 or 81% that had not previously participated in the program. Executive intern program, this is for our college students, as we discussed. This is for 13 positions. When 2011, when we revamped the program, there was no college component to the program. When we started the college program, essentially they worked in individual departments. What we saw was the opportunity, because this age group, they really like to work in teams, they like to work collectively, and we created this cohort concept. This concept provides the opportunity for young people to work together and then create deliverables that increase the efficiency and effectiveness of the organization. There are projects that have just hung around, that they've come in, hit the ground running, and they've taken over those projects. One of the cohorts last year was at Old Dominion University, where they had 4 engineering students that worked on an app for us. In 2016, we had 123 applicants for the program. In 2017, we had 127. Interviews will commence next week for the program. There were 18 Virginia colleges and universities where students applied to the program, and 9 from out-of-state colleges and universities. Training elements. So it's not just that we bring you on and have you work in the summer. We have a support network, a structure to the program. And for both our 16 and 19-year-old program as well as our executive intern program, there is a detailed training program that goes with the program. So as you all know, that word repurposing comes in. So sometimes we're not going to get additional money. So what we have to do is we have to reinvent ourselves. So one of the ways we reinvented ourselves is we came back in-house to the Department of Human Resources, and Human Resources, they created a world-class training program for us for both our 16 and 19-year-old programs. Our 16 and 19-year-olds, they will be focusing this year on conflict resolution as well as resume writing and interviewing skills. That's what they will be focusing on, because at some point, summertime will be over and you're going to need another job. So we're going to help them get there. I remember back in 2013 when we went totally to electronic application process, there was some concern about that process. But if you go out into the world today, that's the only way that you're going to be able to apply for a job. So we're getting our young people ready for what's going on in the actual work environment. So for the 16 and 19-year-olds, they get the 2-day training, and then for our executive intern, they get 5 training sessions that they will take place throughout the summer. So the proof of the success of this program, especially with our executive interns, is if you look out on the program, you will see names that some of them are in this room right now, and some of them are scattered throughout this organization. But not only inside this organization, there's a young man, John Garrett, who I just think is a fabulous human being. So he works for one of our local banks. but he was an executive intern. So if they don't come here, there is some organization in this area that they may end up with, and that's the goal of the program, is how do we retain this talent inside of the city of Norfolk? Questions?
Mrs. McClellan.
I think this
Yes,
is great. Internships for me were foundational for my success later in life. So I'm huge on this. You know, we've talked about this. As I look at this, I wonder why we don't have more executive interns, the college level. If you had 127 for 13 spots, you only were able to take 10% versus, 657 for 250 slots. Maybe there's an opportunity to balance some of those numbers out. And those are the kids who are getting closer to graduating, can come back here and be part of the workforce too. So I don't know if there's been any thought to that as well.
Mr. Bender.
So it's a sweet spot. So 2011, we came in, we worked to find what would work best. And these cohorts, I mean, equals out in numbers, and we find it's just bandwidth, right? So that's sharp kids for a certain amount of time, and if it gets any bigger, in my opinion, it becomes really hard to have a deliverable. So that's why we use dedicate, like last year we used public safety. We found folks who have criminal justice background, who want to become police officers, or go into some kind of dedicated public safety service. And we funnel them right in there. So I understand where you are, and plus, part of what I think Wayne would share too is, on average, we're now partnering with Norfolk Southern and other intern programs to where these groups come together and they become kind of support systems for each other. So when they're talking about coming back, we want them to come back to Norfolk. So they're creating connections. So through Barry Bishop and Mary Miller with Downtown Norfolk Council, they've helped a stage outside. So no, do you get the professional things, you get the fun opportunity to be together and do bike rides and boat sailing and some other things. So just we could probably go just a little bit bigger, but I wouldn't get too big because then I don't know if they're going to get the same kind of structured, specific opportunity. But it's something we always can look at.
Mrs. Johnson.
Mr. Green?
Yes, ma'am.
So one of my questions was how many participants. You answered that. How do we market or outreach to the city? And you explained through the colleges and universities, nonprofit organization, and NRHA. This is a wonderful program. I can say that I believe in it. But how could we possibly assist your program by having a sort of boots on the ground type outreach going on? Meaning that although we're marketing and we're outreaching to the colleges and universities, majority of our citizens still don't know about this wonderful program. So I would possibly like to see how we could join together and go out into the various communities and have a direct impact to the citizens and see what we could possibly open up that way.
Mr. Crittenden has a vision, and one of the things that he has talked about is getting us to look at going out more into the community. But the other piece of it is, at some point, the organization is capped in regards to how many jobs we actually can have, right? So at some point, we're going to have to go out to the private sector and say, private sector, how do you create or work with us on a model that has a sign or something that says, we are youth friendly, we're ready to hire youth. How do we do that partnership? So,
I got you.
Yeah.
I got
So
you.
one of the, Tom, before, one of the challenges that you are experiencing right now, you had over 674 around about to apply. And you started off with about 253, and at the end of the program, it was down 220. So I don't think there's a issue with the demand. It's just the capacity to provide the opportunities. Going outside of the city into the private sector may be the cure, and that's going to take probably partnership and partnership with the business community, as well as with some of the industries. And
So that's what we used to do. Paul, do you remember this?
Yeah,
That's how we started. We started
This
internships with private
So, Paul, before you go, Tommy was waiting in the queue, did not go to you, Mr. Riddick.
Okay. Thank you, Wayne. Always entertaining. I just, I don't want you to take this as a criticism at all. It's an outstanding program. But you have a lot of applications, and when you have a lot of applications, and I know this because that's how my school operates, there's always people who point fingers about how people get selected. So just as you continue growing and you have a wonderful young woman running the program, Granby graduate,
UVA graduate.
UVA,
Wahoo, wahoo.
we'll talk about that later. But that you look at things like that, I know in the past there's, accusation made that more of the employees' kids get picked for this program, or they knew about it, so they applied for it before it got out to other kids in the community. I also heard that more private school kids get picked for this program because they really push it. I don't believe any of that is true. And so I just want to make sure that as you guys continue to work on developing this program, that you look at that fidelity of the application process and how people are picked for it, and making sure that you're getting that diverse representation of our community. I mean, there was even one lady said that there were Virginia Beach kids that were getting picked, for this. And how did Virginia Beach kids get put in it? They lied and said they had a Norfolk address. I'm used to that. I don't buy any of that stuff. I think you guys run an outstanding program. But I just think that as you go forward and you continue to grow and develop that application, you may want to, put even guidelines on there like that. I don't know. I've never seen the application, so I don't know what's out there. But you guys do an outstanding job with it. I know so many young people through the school system that have gone through this, and it really does work with them being developed into future leaders. And as I've discussed before, I really hope that you guys will link to the leadership camp that Katie Arroyo does for Norfolk Public Schools kids, and get those kids that if they attend that camp, that they actually can get a spot on this, because they're already being trained in that leadership camp, but helping to grow that program as well that we've been doing. So I think we're creating future competition for us as well, and running against us, and that's okay. So develop those future leaders and keep on doing a great job.
All right, Mr. Riddick.
Yeah, Dr. Woodbury, I do remember. I always hate to say but I actually initiated this program in 1995. George Crawley was the assistant city manager, and we did start off with a few jobs, maybe 90 or 100. And I'm really proud to see how it has evolved. But one thing that concerns me is that I'd like to make sure that these jobs reach youngsters who are right at the poverty level that we're talking about. And somebody said that you get all your jobs by computers. I also want to make sure, and this you probably hired, I don't know what you have, but that make sure that that these jobs reach youngsters that don't have computers. Now, I can truthfully say that I've spoken to a few parents that live in the public housing community, and we've been successful in reaching them. And so I just hope that we can continue to do that, and maybe next year could be another 10 jobs at the intern level, as well as the 16 to 19-year-old level. And years ago, I had spoken to the NRHA, and I don't know whether they are providing jobs, but I'd always thought that it would be good if you could take a youngster, you could start them off in the 10th grade and let them rotate, whether it's carpentry, electricity, and also administratively. And then after the second year, say, well, heck, I like electricity. Let me get into that. Well, I like carpentry. So this is why we have to expose our youngsters to a variety of occupations. Maybe next year, the police chief can find some national grants, because there have to be some national grants out there, because most communities are trying to get younger people to embrace, public safety. And the same with the fire department. And so I just really believe that we can continue to make this grow. And I don't know whether any other communities around have it, but I know we've had it, since 1995. And I'm just proud of the way it has evolved. And Wayne, I think your enthusiasm also adds to the ambiance of the presentation. So Keep it up.
Mrs. Graves?
Yeah, I just want to say, I really am excited about this program. I remember when we changed it from the Norfolk Earn and Learn program over to the Norfolk Emerging Leaders program. And to see the program evolve from where it was when I came on council to what you all envisioned and are now bringing forth is really, really great. Do we still have the 2.0 grade point average requirement for students?
Yes, we do.
Okay, all right, that's great. And the other thing that I just want to say, I like the idea that we don't have, I mean, I know we probably could hire a few more students, but I kind of like the idea of the exclusivity of it. I mean, working for the city is a big deal. And I think that once we put the criteria out there and let people know about it, and they know that it's not just your average minimum wage job or whatever, I think that the exclusivity of coming to work for the city, it really is a big deal, and I really do like it. And last year I was working spent the day at SunTrust Bank, and there were several young people who were coming in and they had their NEL lanyards on and they were cashing their paychecks. And so I think that's a great thing, but I also think that's one of the other things that we do have to consider as we expand the program. There's a lot of human resource time that goes into new hires. And so we have to consider that as well when we talk about expanding it. It's not just bringing on more kids, but it's also, whatever background checks have to be done for wherever they're going to be working, and then getting them into the system and getting them ID numbers and all that kind of stuff. So that's also something that we have to consider as well when we talk about expanding the program. But great job. This is amazing.
Thank you. Mrs. McClellan?
So do we as a council do anything to support this? Do we
We fund
provide
it.
pay
better-
for
We
it.
fund it.
We pay for it.
Yeah, we fund
I know what you mean.
Well, I would be
Lunch.
happy to have a lunch or host an outing or a dinner or something like that with council members who would like to join me. Because I think it's important for our interns to also have the opportunity to interact with their elected leaders. So I don't know to what extent we've done in the past, but we can brainstorm on it. I think it's important for them to get to know us too and to understand what it is to run for office. And as Tommy said, hope to inspire them to do so one day.
Well, we actually have in the past at, what is it, closing day, end of the,
Yes, closing
somewhere
day.
around
Together
there, where we have had various council members who have come and spoken to the young people and answered questions and explained what we do and that kind of thing. We actually have done that for several years in a row now. So it's a part of the program. Yep. And then they do lunch after,
Yes.
out in the foyer there. So, yeah.
Thank you, Wayne. All right.
All right, so Mayor, there's so much to like in that, a creative, innovative program that frankly has gotten just embedded in the culture of this organization. And so I think you all should be very proud of that. One of the things we're also trying to do is get folks like Wayne and Alana in front of you all to see that there's a lot of talent in this organization doing a lot of good work. So we appreciate y'all being here this evening. And we'll talk about the ARB. We got time, I think, to talk about ARB process tonight that's on your agenda. And Bernard, I don't know if that's you or Brett that's better to talk through what's going to go on out front.
Oh, the certificate of appropriateness appeal? Yes, that you have on your agenda tonight a gentleman who wants to demolish an apartment building that he owns in the Freemason Historic District, I think is the neighborhood. And Ghent, it's in the Ghent Historic District. And what I wanted to talk to you about is just give you an opportunity to, I'll run through the process quickly. It's very simple. Somebody from the staff, I believe Lenny and another planning person, will bring you up to date on the status, the application, ARB's review and recommendation, and introduce it. And that'll be followed by the applicant, who has up to 15 minutes to make his case. The burden is on him in our business to convince you. You're sitting as a judge in this again. His burden is to convince you that it's not economically feasible to renovate this project. And so if you agree with him, you can vote yes and grant his appeal. If you disagree with him, you would vote no. So he has 15 minutes that he can divide up to make his case. Then anybody in the public who has interest in the matter gets up to our 3 minutes to address it. And then at the end, the applicant can take a last 3 minutes for any rebuttal that has been given, caused by any other speaker. That's it in a nutshell. Your question, what you'll be voting on tonight, is whether the applicant has met his burden of convincing you that the property is not economically feasible to maintain and renovate. And I'll go ahead and run on a little bit that if you determine that he's not met his burden and vote no on the applicant, then the state code requires us to have in our city code, which we do have, the ability for him to market the property. And if he cannot sell it within 12 months for its fair market value, then he has the right to demolish it by having demonstrated that the marketplace will not purchase it. So I just wanted to run through the process. You'll hear the case tonight, and I don't know if that brief process leaves you with any questions about the process.
Dr. Whibley.
So are we going to be reviewed on what the city has done as far as code enforcement on this property?
Lenny, are you doing the city's introduction?
The code enforcement essentially began in 2015 over the condition of the building. The applicant bought the building and another one just down the block. He bought 511 Graydon and he bought 616 Graydon. He ended up selling 511 and it's been very successfully rehabilitated. I will have a slide that show you some pictures of that one. This one he's been on the market with. The first person who wanted to buy it wanted to tear it down and build townhouses. There have been other people discussing with the owner rehabilitation of the building. As you know, the older buildings in historic districts are eligible for historic tax credits. They're also eligible for city tax abatement, which makes the ability to rehabilitate an older, in poor condition building a lot more feasible than those other ones. The code enforcement, if the building is kept secure and you cannot enter the building, that's in compliance with code enforcement. Mr. Rogers, it's his bureau that handles that.
Yeah, the only reason we have it on our radar screen is to get community, it's 4 properties that they asked us to give them an update every a month on, and that 616 is one of those. But again, it's in compliance because again, it is secure and there's no code enforcement that we can put on that property.
I mean, is anybody else troubled by the fact that somebody can buy a property, let it run down to the point where nobody wants to buy it, and then says, well, couldn't get a good offer for it, and now I get to tear it down?
Yes.
mean, that-
Can I be a little bit rude and ask you to be careful to not discuss the case? Due process that. That question, if you could save it for the hearing, might be a little bit better time for it.
So why don't we?
I just don't want to get to
All
the
right, so
merits.
then let me ask one other thing. Are we aware of any offers on this property?
Yes.
We'll do that upstairs?
Yeah, so what we want to do right
All
now
right,
is
so
give you
basically I should
process.
just be quiet now.
This was about, this is a process conversation.
Something you've been wanting to say to me for a long time. Don't worry.
Shut up, Terry.
Don't worry.
We can say it.
Don't worry.
All right, Mr. Manager.
All right, so, Mayor, we've got 3 real estate items for a closed session.
Mr. Clerk.
Other members of council will assemble informally in closed meeting on March 28, 2017 at 6:10 p.m. for the purpose set out in clause 3 of subsection A of section 2.2, 3711 Virginia Freedom of Information Act. That is the discussion of the disposition of publicly owned real property in the Lamberts Point, Midtown Industrial, and Ocean View areas of the city. Ms. Graves?
Aye.
Ms. Johnson?
Aye.
Ms. McClellan?
Aye.
Mr. Riddick?
Aye.
Mr. Smigiel,
Aye.
Mr. Thomas?
Aye.
Dr. Whibley?
Aye.
Mr. Alexander?
Aye.